Okay, Thursday night, and it's an absolutely beautiful night, probably the nicest night of the year. So what are we going to do today?
We're going to go for a drive.
We're going to go for a drive. We got a little surprise text, say, do you want to go for a drive tonight? So we're going for a drive in the TR3.
I haven't been in this car ever, I think.
I think you've been in it once, no?
I haven't even sat in it.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a momentous occasion.
Yeah.
Might even get to drive it later. All right, guys, Friday, June 7th, and we have an absolutely perfect afternoon. About 23 degrees Celsius, full sun. Good day to be out here doing some epoxy priming. So that's what we're going to do. We got the compressor charging up. That's what's making all the noise, besides me. Got the car covered up, and anything we don't want overspray on, covered up. You can see that I mentioned about these panels flash rusting, and you can actually see, I must have had a finger here, you can actually see some rust starting to form here. So we're going to give these a quick re-scratch with some 80 grit, and then we're going to clean them up with some grease and wax remover, and I usually finish with some rubbing alcohol, and then we'll hit them with some epoxy primer. I'll come back when we're mixing the primer. I'll show you what I'm using. Okay, I've decided to spray these panels flat. I was going to do them on the stands, but it doesn't really help because I can't do the backside anyway, because I can't get under the lip of the fenders, and I can't get good coverage on the backside. Just the stands get in the way, so I prefer to do top side first and then wait for them to dry and then do the backside after, within the 7-day recoat window, so I don't have to sand anything back up. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to spray these one by one on the flat table, and then we'll move them outside to dry. So I'm only going to do the front and rear fender today. The door is not quite ready to go yet, so we'll hold off on the door. But at least we can get these two panels into epoxy. So got the epoxy out over here on the counter, and this is mixed 1 to 1. There's no induction time on this epoxy. I did get black epoxy, and here's the catalyst. So I'm using a Proform product. It was available from my local body store, so they didn't have a huge selection of epoxy primers. So anyway, hopefully this will be okay. I haven't used this before, but I'm sure it's going to be okay. It's just epoxy primer. So as long as I got my surface prep down properly, this is actually calling for a sanding grit scratch of 180 to 220. So I've just gone back over the panel just with some 220 on a soft block. So it was in 80 grit, now it's in 220. I've gone back through the panel and re-cleaned it with my grease and wax remover, and followed that up with the rubbing alcohol. So we're pretty much ready to go on this panel. So we're going to mix up some primer. We got the gun all ready to go, got the air pressure set. So nothing left to do but mix up the primer. So we're going to go ahead and do that and shoot that panel. Front fender in black epoxy. Alright guys, fender number 1 is done. Two coats of epoxy on there, so I can see where I need to do some more filler work, that's for sure. But anyway, we've got it covered so she won't flash rust. So we'll move this outside when it's a little bit more dry onto our stands, and we'll bring the other fender in and we'll start working on that. Painting day today. They're actually painting my fire hydrant on my lawn. They just needle scaled it, and now they're in the process of priming and painting it. Painting day. Probably the first day it hasn't rained. Everybody taking advantage of that, including the town. Alright, we'll get this outside. Alright guys, the rear fender is in, so we've just mixed up our second batch of epoxy, and we'll go ahead and shoot this, wait for it to dry a little bit, and we'll move outside with the other fender to dry in the sun. So, let's get busy. Okay, we got the rear fender out in the, well, sort of the sun. It's kind of a little shady at the moment, close to the house, but anyway, the rear fender is looking good, so we'll probably let these dry for a little bit longer, and then we will do the back sides. So yeah, this one's pretty much ready to go, but I'm going to let it dry for another hour or so before I want it to harden up. I actually might even let them go overnight and do these tomorrow. I do have a car show to attend in the morning, but we could probably do these in the afternoon tomorrow. The weather's supposed to be good tomorrow as well. So maybe what we'll do is we'll just let these dry for a period of time and then get back to them tomorrow. No rush to do the interiors of them. I still have that door to work on. So we could do that today instead and just finish these interiors tomorrow. I think that's what we're going to do. Alright guys, welcome back to the Taj Mahal. It's Monday, July the 8th, and we're just coming up to 5 after 10. Another beautiful day out today. I think it's going to be about a high of about 25 or 26 degrees Celsius, so a good day to be out in the garage. Haven't been out here for a while. It's been a few weeks. I think you'll probably see a little bit of preceding video of me shooting these fenders over here in black epoxy. That was the last thing I remember or recall doing out here. Anyway, we're going to have a bit of a garage cleanup first, and we'll figure out what we're going to do for the day. We'll be back. Alright guys, we're going to pick up where we last left off, and I'd finished epoxying the exterior of the front and rear driver's side fenders, wings, whatever you want to call them. And we were starting to work on the door, and the door needs quite a bit of cleanup. As you recall, I found some rot in the top piece of the door over here that we repaired. Let me just flip this over without dropping it. So we repaired this area up in here, so that's looking better. Now we're going to clean up all the other parts, and I'm sure we'll probably find some other areas that need repair. I was looking down here, looks a little suspect down in this corner, so we'll find out what we see there when we get the wire brush out. Anyway, we're going to clean this door up a bit more, and we'll come back once we have it cleaned up. And the hope is to get this into epoxy primer. After a little body work, it's got some dents on the exterior of this door as well. Down the bottom here needs to be cleaned up a little bit, so we'll probably put a thin scratch coat over the entire surface of this door and then block it down. Anyway, we'll get there eventually. Okay guys, surprise, surprise. We've got more welding repairs to do. Here's that bottom corner of the door after we've taken the wire brush to it. And it's pretty much non-existent. So what we're planning on doing is we're planning on doing a shallow cut here, a shallow cut here, shallow cut here, bend this bottom flange back, and then we're going to replace the piece on the, you can see there's a little rust spot. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's starting to come through on this side, so we're going to basically repair the bottom corner of this door on the outside, and then we'll bend these flanges back in after repair this area on the inside with another piece of metal, and then we'll tackle this little piece up here that's perforated. So that's the plan. Anyway, we've got the Dremel out. We're going to make a few cuts, bend a few things. Sorry, I'm still a little under the weather, so I'm a little bit hoarse. Anyway, we'll get the Dremel out, cut these, bend that back, remove some metal, make some new patches, and weld that back in there. I'll try to show the steps along the way as usual. guys, the front side is done, and now we'll proceed to the back side and fit a little piece of metal back in there and bend the door flanges back over and tack those in place. So that's what we'll do next. Just a quick shot of the back side of the repair, and you can see we got a good penetration on the welds. What we're going to do is we'll just break the sandblaster out now and just give this corner, the upper corner, a little bit of a quick sandblast to clean up the metal. The metal is solid, just a little bit of rust there, so we'll clean that up before we proceed. We'll put a coat of primer in here, and then we'll make that patch for this bottom corner. So we'll break out the sandblaster and do that. We'll come back. There it is, all sandblasted. So we'll make that interior patch now, and of course we'll prime that before we weld in the patch. But we'll go ahead and make the patch first. We'll spray it with primer, let it dry, then we'll come back and we'll weld it in. All right, we've got our corner patch made. So as I'd mentioned, we're going to pull it back out. We're going to prime behind the patch and behind the patch piece, and then we're going to weld it in, and we'll fold back over the flanges and just weld them up where we cut them. And we'll throw a bit of weld back in here to fill this gap, and we'll fix up this little hole here. Hopefully the brazing's not going to get in the way, as per usual on this car. Anyway, we'll go ahead and do that. We'll spray it, let it dry, take a bit of a break, come out, weld it in. We're back after some lunch, so we've got that primer done as we mentioned. I just ground a few areas where I can tack this plate in, or this patch in. So we're just about to fit it back in here and weld it in, and then we'll bend over those flanges and we'll fully weld it up. All right guys, we have that corner looking better now. It's all ground down and finished welded up. So we're happy with that. Should be good for another 50 years. Anyway, we're going to break out the DA, and we're going to do a little 80 grit on the exterior of this panel, and just a little bit more cleanup on the interior. I got a little bit of rust to remove down here, so we'll break out the 80 grit and we'll give this a good scuff over, clean up the outside, and we'll do some body work on the exterior of this panel. There we go, and there's the corner. So we'll scuff this down. It's got some overspray on it, some primer nibs on it, so we'll just clean this up before we get ready to get it into that black epoxy primer. Okay, we've got the door all DA'd down, and not surprisingly, there's quite a few little dents in this door that need to be taken care of. I'm not sure if you can see, like the crater of the moon, quite a few dents here and there, some hammer marks, a lot of stuff going on down here along the bottom where I think they probably put a new skin on and hammered it along the bottom, and quite a bit of work to do along the top of the door. We're going to concentrate on this flat piece first and get that straight. I think, like I said, we're going to probably do mostly a skim coat and then sand that off. That's probably the easiest way to do this. So I think we'll go ahead and break out the Bondo and start applying and start sanding. Alright guys, we got our first skim coat on, and I've got it dry coated, or guide coated. And we've got the 80 grit out, we've got our long blocks, and we're going to go to town and see how we're doing as far as highs and lows are concerned, and we'll give it a second coat as required. It's coming up to 4:30, we're getting there slowly but surely. This is about the third application of filler. We're just waiting for this to dry, and then we'll start the sanding process again. Still haven't started the top of the door yet, so we'll get to that next, but the flat part's looking better anyway, so we'll continue on. Alright guys, just coming up to 6:45, and we're going to call it a day. I've got pretty much most of it done. Need to add a little bit more filler up in here, just around this mirror location. Other than that, it looks pretty good. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get into the epoxy primer today. That's going to have to wait for another day. Got to have some dinner. I got to get ready for work tomorrow, so we'll stop where we're at. It's a good place to stop. Anyway, I got to give the garage a bit of a quick cleanup. Got to bring the cars in. So that'll probably take about another half an hour or so to do. So we'll be in the house probably by 7:15, and we'll grab some dinner and call it a night. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.